Chapter 8. Sirens wailed. Her teeth and fists clenched, Ella stood staring at the fire. That had engulfed the Cherokee Road safe house. Whatever cold there had been in the November night was gone, along with any lingering snow. The fire trucks and the police would be here in minutes, followed by the press. Not that the fire trucks would make any difference. This fire started by magic would be almost impossible to put out, even more difficult to manage than the one that had consumed the witch's house on 3 Chopped. The fire would pull the house down into what would be a horrendous black smoking pit along with most of the church next door. The fence between them was already burning. The fire would smolder for days, flaring and erupting from time to time, in flashes and geysers of flame. Headline news in the Richmond Times-Dispatch, the lead story on the morning news shows. She glanced at the watcher she had just named as her lieutenant, a short female who now stood beside Ella, exhausted, rips in her burgundy-colored wings and her skin the color of a fresh cherry. Ella and the lieutenant both had barely made it out of the burning house when the failsafes had erupted. 5 other watchers stood with them, equally exhausted. Ella had to give the order to leave within the next 2 minutes or risk disclosure. The order to openly attack the godling and the pet in England didn't yet extend to situations like this. Or did it? Ella was no longer certain. The bones of the watchers, 25 of whom had died in the safe house, were human enough to pass any known lab tests. There would be no conclusive explanations, only speculation in the newspaper and on the local radio and television stations. It was time. To the watcher house. She signaled to the others. Then Ella whispered a black wind into the air, into the shadows. She whispered fear and danger and pain and disquiet and paranoia, and the wind carried them, a darkening susurrus. Ella took flight when the first fire engine pulled into the driveway and cut its siren. Someone cried out to look up, and she paused and hovered, half hidden in the smoke. They won't be sure if what they see is real, but they will be afraid. She whispered another black wind into the city, and another, and the last to bring a storm. With the final whisper she sent the surviving demons and imps flying on the energy of her command. Into the shadows ride the dark winds, attack. Jamey opened his eyes. They stood behind a table in a group study room on the 3rd floor where he and Charlie had worked on that anthro project. How long ago? A little over a year. Oh, Charlie. The only light in the room came from Dr. M's glowing staff. Jamey shivered from the chill. The thermostats were set to drop automatically. Once the library closed at 10 p.m., over 2 hours ago, the raven flapped its wings and flew the few feet from Bonnie's shoulder to Henry's, where it whispered into his ear, "Pruck, pruck, pruck." Henry pulled Jamey close, his own body thermostat already resetting to counter the cold. Jamey leaned into Henry as Dr. M and Bonnie hurriedly conferred. Their voices too low for him to hear. Bonnie's animals grumbled in the papoose on her back. Henry probably heard everything they were saying with those lupin ears of his. Jamey grinned as he thought about how he had and still wanted to touch them, trace their shape with his fingers, stroke the tufts of soft hair. Probably not the best place or time to play with Henry's ears. All right. Out front, go to the street. The Henrico Covens are sending someone to pick us up. We just had to sort some things out. Let's go. Dr. Malloy turned toward the 2 boys. We can't wait any longer. We need help from other witches. We need to get commitments. We need to calm people down. I know there are probably other witches like Gracie who might be afraid to help us for fear of disclosure, even if that's moot at this point. I can tell by the looks on your faces I've lost you. Never mind. I'll explain everything when we get to the next safe house. The stairs are this way, past the elevator. She used her staff as if it were a flashlight, casting a light beam in the right direction. Jamey stared at her. What was she talking about? He stopped her by the elevator door. What are we going to do next? Hunt for Loki's key. I don't know yet. I do know a bit more about it, though. In a dream the witch in the wood told me it's here, near the 2 of you. Jamey and Henry looked at her, then at each other. We sort of know that, not what it means. We dreamed your dream trip to her. I don't know how. We didn't do it on purpose, and we weren't trying to spy on you or anything. It was like watching TV. Henry pressed the down button. Check the sign. Bonnie pointed to an out-of-order flyer. Anyway, visitation dream can be like a net. Sounds like you both got caught in it. Let's go. She carried her complaining animals past the elevator and through the stairwell door. We have to get to a safe place. Now. No one spoke, not even the Siamese cat. Henry took Jamey's hand as they followed the two witches and Dr. M's shining staff down the stairs, the sounds of all their footsteps hollow echoes. Henry wished they could have stayed longer in the VCU library. He had never been inside a library that big. The deep-run high school library didn't compare. He'd never seen so many books at one time in the same place, except maybe at the Barnes & Noble at Short Pump. Way more books here. Henry grimaced, thinking how much of an ignoramus that made him sound. Now Henry, you are not college material. You don't even read that much, you barely passed your English classes. He remembered what the counselor had told him, and she was right. Part of it, he was sure, was how hard he had worked at being invisible in high school. He could go for an entire day at school and have his presence in the classroom barely register. Yes, Mr. Sanders, I was here yesterday and on Monday and Tuesday, all of which is ridiculous to think about, given where we are and what's going on. But when he saw the open space of the second floor, the couches, the odd-looking screens, he wished he could be in a group of students clustered together talking about their classes, their professors, where to go for lunch, what they had done last night. He would be mostly quiet, but every now and then he might say something about his classes or his professors, and they'd listen, and Jamey would laugh, and they would be side by side, a couple together, and all their friends wouldn't care, and it would all be so very, very normal, and Henry would belong. Maybe it wasn't so ridiculous to think about high school and college and belonging and not belonging. Wasn't everything they were doing about belonging? Being a real visible part of the world. Another flight of stairs straight down to the first floor, past a colorful mural of the campus covering the wall, past a Starbucks. The Siamese yowled. We're hurrying, Dr. Malloy said to the cat. Oh, you're right. That way. Dr. Malloy pointed with her staff beyond the Starbucks to what had to be the main entrance. Will you guys stop fussing? Bonnie muttered over her shoulder to the small dog and the other 3 cats in the papoose on her back. Can you deactivate the alarm before it goes off? I'm not going to, Dr. M answered as they walked past the portrait of the U.S. President and the signs outlining the laws that limited public access to the library. By the time the campus police get here, we will be long gone, and any distraction will slow down the watchers. Outside the library, Compass Plaza was almost empty. A couple of lone students were walking on either end, while a handful more clustered in the center of the huge compass rose in the middle. 2 couples hid in opposing clumps of shadows. Henry wanted to ask the students what they were doing out here so late at night, where they were going and why. What would they do if they knew? He was a werewolf and Jamey was a godling, and these 2 women were witches, and that somewhere in Richmond a big magically started fire was burning down a house. That way, Bonnie snapped. Move it. We can't stay here. Are y'all hard of hearing? Move. If we run, we will attract attention, Bonnie, Dr. M snapped back. Harrison Street is right over there. No sign of any watchers. Just keep walking. Henry jerked his head around toward the library. There's the alarm. Keep walking, Dr. M repeated. Henry stayed as close to Jamey as he could, letting his hand brush against his arm, his back. They all smelled afraid. Pruck, pruck. The raven flew a few feet ahead and then back, ahead, then back. Clearly they weren't walking fast enough to suit the bird. Henry heard one of the people standing on the compass telling his friend to check out the guy with the big black bird. A minute later they were on Harrison Street. They're coming, dear gods, no, not them. Bonnie waved them back from the sidewalk. Henry smelled them first, but before he could cry out, they were upon them, bounding up out of the shadows, snarling, growling. Werewolves on 2 and 4 feet a pack. Behind them, a black van came racing down the street. Dr. M swung her staff, thunking wolf heads and human heads. Henry frantically tried to strip off his clothes as he felt the change coming quickly, his flesh rippling, stretching, and contracting. He ripped off his sweatshirt and started to shove his jeans down when a fist hit his head and he fell hard onto the pavement. Above him the raven clawed at faces and tails until slapped away. There was a high, sharp yowl as the Siamese was tossed onto the sidewalk. The black cat, who had gone from house cat to panther, roared and jumped on a wolf, biting its neck, shaking it back and forth. The Pomeranian, 3 times its original size, attacked one of the wolves. Took 3 wolves to bring down the black cat/panther and break its neck too. More to do the same to the Pomeranian. Somewhere nearby people screamed and yelled. A siren shrieked. Jamey tried to yank out his sword but was grabbed from behind in a burlap. Sack was jerked over his head. He fought back, punching and kicking, then a fist slammed into his face. The burlap scratching Henry's face smelled rough, old and dusty. His head ached, something on his cheek felt like dried blood. He smelled trees and cold. And water that sounded as if it were behind the trees. Heat. A fire closer than the trees. He heard the fire muttering. Gravel cut into his bare skin and he moved a few inches onto hard dirt, leaves and dampness. Rope cut into his wrists and ankles. His body had adjusted to the cold. Now he felt tiny shifts in his body to accommodate the closeness of the fire. No sounds of traffic but nearby, louder than the river, voices and growling animals, humans and wolves. He took a deep breath. Werewolves, the ones who had attacked them. Were they working for the Watchers? He took another deep breath. Another scent. Jamey. He's alive. The fire had obscured his scent and something else, as if he was somehow not asleep and yet not awake. He's knocked out. The voices, feet and paws on the gravel were all around him. Dory Vernon, take the bag off his head, untie him. Get him on his feet. Now. Y'all give us some space, a dark voice growled. Rough hands, one pair clawed, jerked him off the ground. Unbending almost made him cry out. He stood motionless as whoever was behind him, muttering and grumbling, untied the ropes from his hands and feet while clawed fingers yanked the bag from his head. Feeling shaky and sore, Henry was in a small clearing surrounded by woods, thick and dark, interrupted by a narrow path that led, he guessed, to the river. A few feet away, he saw a small fire in a shallow pit surrounded by a circle of gray and white stones. He wished he stood right by the fire. No matter how quickly his body's temperature adjusted, he was cold. A handful of lanterns hung in nearby trees, like small fires suspended in the air, probably for the humans. Henry saw regular shapes below the lanterns, fences, lean-tos maybe. He heard running water all around them. So, we're on an island in the river. There were 8 or 9 men and women, some naked and some sort of dressed, half-wrapped in blankets. At least 5 wolves. One of the wolves howled and was answered by another, farther down by the river. An older man stood facing Henry on the other side of the fire, naked except for an old blanket wrapped around him like he was a Roman guy in the movies. Hair silver-streaked, more silver than dark, and his eyes were more wolf than human. He had a very hairy body and his werewolf and human scent was laced with fear. Henry was naked too, except for his pentacle. At least these were werewolves. And not Watchers, so it didn't matter so much except to make him feel vulnerable. Jamey lay on the ground, covered in another blanket, behind the older man. What's your name, boy? You're a loner, aren't ya? Henry Thorne. Yeah, I guess I am sort of a lone wolf. Y'all are the first werewolves I've ever met, except for my mama, and that was in a dream. Didn't even know I was one or what one was until a few weeks ago. Can you let me check on my friend, please? The older man stepped aside as Henry crossed to Jamey and knelt. Jamey looked and smelled more or less okay. Henry wanted desperately to ease off Jamey's backpack and untie him, inspect his body for wounds, kiss and hold him. Instead, he turned back to face the man. He hoped these werewolves didn't smell his desire and his worry and his fear, but he knew they would. Henry wondered if they cared how he felt and if they would even mention what they smelled. Well, we've heard of you two, all right. You and that witch and this boy have been causing a hell of a lot of trouble. Got the goddamn Watchers awake and on our butts. Haven't heard from those things in years and now they're all over the place. Why'd you come after us? Henry interrupted, which he immediately regretted. As the werewolves, human and Lupin, moved closer, their growling and snarling deeper. The older man stepped forward, letting his blanket drop to the ground. His fangs got longer as the hair on his chest and arms and face thickened. His ears changed into wolf as Henry watched, feeling his own ears and fangs and body hair change in response. Do you know who I am, loner boy? I'm the Ulfric, the Packmaster, the Alpha. I speak for Lycaeus for this pack. And you have no fucking idea what I'm talking about, do ya? Henry shook his head and stepped back. Jamey stirred then and moaned. Head wolf, speaker for the wolf god. And you and your damn buddy here. Fucking godling, if I ever smelt one, are getting all of us in trouble. Werewolves hide, you fucking idiot. We live in shadows. We have those jobs. Others don't see. We make shadows. Don't you fucking know anything? And your fucking witch friends killed 3 of us. The rest of the pack drew closer. The wolves, now there were more of them, circled the clearing. They sure shed their clothes and changed fast. Dory and Vernon, the only 2 left in human form, stood on either side of the pack. Master, naked and ready to change. Henry was sure the 2 were brother and sister. Jamey groaned and rolled over on his back. In the flickering light of the fire, Henry could see the bruises and dried blood mottling his face. I know about the shadows. I figured that out when I was a kid. What do you want with us? What the Watchers are doing isn't our fault. The hell it ain't. The Watchers are supposed to protect us, boy. That's what Zeusodin promised Lycaeus. He promised that Lycaeus's children would be safe. They've been hunting you and this godling here. The Ulfric kicked Jamey in the leg. And those damn witches. Now they're after us. Damn loners always. 'Cause trouble 'cause they don't know shit. Don't know our Lukoi language or why we are here at our Lupaner or what the fuck those words mean. Why didn't your mama let a pack raise you if she couldn't do it herself? Was she a lost one? 2. My dad wasn't a werewolf. I think he tried to kill her or something. I was too little to remember. I don't know if she was lost. Henry pushed away that misery and grief and growled deep in his throat. He felt his claws extending. Don't hurt him. What are we going to do? Jamie's still out of it and he doesn't even have his sword unless these wolves hid it somewhere. There's no way I can fight off an entire pack. If I can just hold on until he wakes up, then he can do his godling thing and get us out of here. The Ulfric glanced sidewise at Dory, then Vernon, nodding his head. I get it. He's your boy. I can smell it now. He's your Ulfric and you're his. Just like the damn stories. This makes it fucking worse, but it's just a damn story, he snarled at Vernon, who had almost said something. Henry could smell the worry and fear, thick and pungent. No, we can't take the risk. The mundanes will kill us if they find out their nightmares are real. It's not personal, you understand? The Ulfric added as the wind rose, whispering in the trees and on the river. We took a big risk tracking you sons of bitches down tonight. We had a bit of scent and we kept driving for days. And just so you'll know that daddy of yours, he carried the gene. Otherwise you wouldn't be here. Your mama had to have smelled it on him. The wind, black and cold, howled and moaned. Ella sent the survivors to beds and couches all over Watcher House. The last few, except for her lieutenant, she ordered to curl up on the thick rugs in the downstairs living room. Then she and the lieutenant retired to the kitchen. The lingering vestiges of Ella's most recent human persona sometimes reasserted itself when she was this tired. This last one, the CPA Danny's wife, the boy's mother, had felt good most of the time except for the occasional memory flash from previous lives, previous Watcher awakenings. Hot chamomile tea had always tasted good and she wanted the tea now and she wanted to take it outside to drink and walk out on the house dock to listen to the lake. She wanted the lieutenant's company for a while. Then she would send the lieutenant to bed and wait for the senior Watcher to arrive. He had the power to wake all the Watchers in Virginia. Her call only extended as far west as Charlottesville and as far east as Williamsburg, north to Fredericksburg, south to Petersburg. She wondered, as she waited for the water to boil, if he would wake up the Watchers in any of the surrounding states. She suspected he might. Lieutenant, your human persona name, what was it? The lieutenant, who had been standing somewhat at attention by the door, looked at her startled. Clearly she was struggling to remember. Estelle, that was it. I remember now. Estelle Carter. Tea? With honey? Ella asked, frowning. Sometimes Watchers lapsed. Remembering the complete human persona name wasn't a good sign. Tea, on the other hand, was a human pleasure she would not deny herself. Estelle shrugged. Ella didn't speak directly to her until the tea was ready, and they were outside, cups in hand, standing at the end of the dock. You are thinking. What? You have reverted, at least your hands, to your human body. Your tail is shorter. You woke up just days ago, yes. Estelle nodded. I still miss them, my family. What will happen to the children of my body? Will they someday wake up? Ella didn't say anything for a while. She watched the water on the lake moving and rippling as the wind picked up. The trees that hid Watcher House shifted back and forth, turning, twisting. She had called it and then fueled it, sent the demons and imps out on it. Yes, she finally said, after draining her cup. Someday at least one or two of them will hear the call to awaken. For now their Watcher selves will sleep. Her observations of the lieutenant had been correct. The human persona had been particularly powerful and it persisted. There were remedies. You asked me what I was thinking. I know the old gods made us a genetic code hidden in the human genome, and in that code is our task to protect the pets. The gods left here. To do so is a biological necessity. But then the old gods made us with minds, with intelligence. Watchers think. Ella sniffed the air. The cold, black wind she had called was coming. We are stern. Estelle expanded and retracted her wings. Not just stern. We're killers, efficient, fast. We are very good at killing. And Captain, I feel like I have two heads. I want, but I know I'm not human. It hurts. She paused, took a deep breath, and flexed her wings again. Once upon a time the pets existed without our protection. The mundanes hurt them. They killed them. If we don't protect them now, it would be the same, wouldn't it? Ella flicked her hand. Go on. Estelle continued. We will have failed our purpose. And what about the old story of Loki's key, that someday the removal will be inevitable? Loki's last joke, and will no longer be necessary. Ella remained silent. A tree came crashing down in the yard a few feet away. She watched a car smash into the bridge over the lake. The wind swallowed both sounds. She touched Estelle's arm and gestured toward the house. Estelle kept walking, shouting to be heard over the wind as they struggled to make their way back inside. We keep the old ones safe, but we also keep the mundane safe. That part one don't understand. Ella turned at the back door and stood, blocking the way in. We control by fear. We have to. Toughness, sternness, as you said. If we let down our guard, chaos will come. We will not let that happen. The old ones made us for that purpose, to protect the pets, to hide magic and keep the secrets of the old gods. The pets and the mundanes must be kept afraid. Order, the law and its truth must be maintained. With one quick motion, Ella grabbed Estelle's arm and jerked her close, pulling the lieutenant against her chest, until her arm was around Estelle's neck. She broke the lieutenant's neck, she whispered. You were too human, my dear. Fighting the wind, she dragged the body out on the pier and threw it into the roiling lake. Closing the door of Watcher House took most of what little strength she had left. She needed to recharge. Ella turned to see the senior watcher standing in the kitchen waiting for her. What the hell is he talking about with this Odin and Ulfric stuff? The wind shifted, colder, wetter, stronger. The trees swayed and bent. The circling wolves stopped and moved back behind the Ulfric, all of them sniffing the air. Henry took a deep breath. This wind reeked of danger, the dark. Another breath, and he smelled the little demons who had attacked them in Cornwall. They were flying on this wind. We have to get out of here. The Ulfric stepped back from Jamey, who was rubbing his head and his eyes and half sitting up. Henry's heart turned over at the look on Jamie's face as he saw Henry on the other side of the fire. Hey, do you smell that? What is that? Wait, the little watchers, they're coming, speaker. We have to finish this first. Take care of these two. The wind, almost as if it were a deliberate act, tore the words from the speaker's mouth, ripping them into letters and sounds, swallowing them. The fire went out. The werewolves, all of them had changed shape, began howling, whimpering and running back and forth. Henry ran to Jamey, untied him, pulled him to his feet. We gotta get outta here. The demons are coming, come on. The demons and imps fell upon them. Whatever Jamey tried to say, even with his mouth against Henry's face, was lost in the wind and the howls of the werewolves who were fighting back as the demons tore into them with fangs and claws. Henry didn't look back. With Jamey half walking, half gripping him, they ran. Jamey stumbled and fell, but Henry pulled him up and finally they were in the woods and down the narrow path. Please go after the werewolves, not please, gods. A flying pig demon caught up to them just as they were in sight of the river. Henry let go of Jamey when the thing dropped on him and tore into his shoulder, its claws raking his bare back. He fell onto the ground trying to roll and throw the thing off. The demon's cries, louder than any banshee, could be heard over the wind. Jamey, still unsteady on his feet, grabbed a rock and slammed it into the thing's head. Henry heard the skull break and felt the dark blood hot on his skin. Keep moving. Henry yanked Jamey up again. Despite bashed knees and arms and Henry's wounds, the two boys kept running down the rocky and root-choked path to the river. Tree branches slapped them in the face. Behind them they could hear more screaming and howling. Jamey, are you okay? They stood by the water breathing hard. Yeah, I'm all right. Can you get us out of here to somewhere safe? I'll try, hold on. Henry grabbed Jamey's hand, closed his eyes and waited as the godling called up strength from somewhere. They were lying on a battered and torn rug in Charlie's apartment. Henry sniffed. The room smelled of watchers and he sensed the creatures weren't far away. Dr. Malloy had warned them the watchers would be close by. We can't stay here. It's not safe. Okay, give me a minute. You're bleeding all over and you're naked. You must be at least a little cold. All right, let's rest for a little while, and then we'll get out of here. Some other place that's safe. And we gotta find Dr. M and Bonnie too. Henry rolled over on his back, then sat up quickly from the pain in the gashes on his back. The apartment had been wrecked. Furniture broken, cushions slashed, shredded. Stuffing was everywhere, like thick dirty snow. Lamps smashed. He struggled to his feet and went into the kitchen. Every dish in the kitchen had been broken. Fragments ground into dust. He glanced out the window. The watchers had wrecked Jamey's car, shredded tires, smashed windshield, doors ripped off. We'll figure it out. Come on and watch out for broken glass. What a mess. Jamey herded Henry into the bathroom to use whatever towels they could find to wash off the blood. There. Those werewolf genes of yours are already healing the cuts. Let's see if we can find you some clothes. He fished around in his backpack and pulled out 2 granola bars. Here, let's eat these. Wait, you're beat up too. Your face is all bruised. Henry gently washed what blood he could from Jamey's skin. I'm sore, really sore, exhausted, but I've got a crazy adrenaline high. You look for clothes while I recharge for a second. Jamey sat on the bed in AL's bedroom, which was sort of in one piece. Outside, the wind howled and rain beat on the window panes that were intact, unlike the ones in the kitchen. AL's clothes were all over the floor, along with his books and papers. His bookshelves and computer had been smashed. Surprisingly, unlike Charlie's clothes, AL's hadn't been shredded or fouled. His neat desk had papers strewn all over it. Henry found another black and gold VCU sweatshirt and some baggy jeans and a belt, and after pulling them on, sat by Jamey and slowly leaned into him. Jamey leaned back, sighing. He pressed his face into Jamey's hair and inhaled. He could do this all day. Look, the light on the answering machine is blinking, Jamey said, pointing. Weird that they didn't smash the phone. It's probably someone trying to find Al. Didn't you say he had gone home? Probably Charlie's family. Jamey got up. He pressed play. An anxious male voice said, Hello? Hello? I'm trying to reach Jamey Curry. Jamey grunted, as if someone had hit him in the stomach. That's my dad. The call had come in yesterday. Jamey's mother had taken ill. She was in Mary Washington Hospital in Fredericksburg. Please pick up if you're there. Come home, please come home. Son, she's calling for you. That other stuff, forget it and just come home. Please, son. Come home. She needs to see you. The message ended. The two boys stared at each other. What I am supposed to do? I have to go see Mama. I have to. The wind kept howling. The rain pounded. Henry caught a whiff of watchers. Dear M had warned that they would check the apartment, and anywhere else they knew. He and Jamey had been. They had to leave and go somewhere to be safe and find Dr. M. Henry, I have to go see Mama. Jamey stared intently at the answering machine, as if waiting to hear some instructions. It's the middle of the night, Jamey. Have you ever been there? Why don't we find a safe place to sleep like the VCU library, then go to the hospital in the morning? I mean, we kind of need a break after tonight. We both look awful. And I feel awful. And we've got to figure out a way to find Dr. M and Bonnie. Some of her pets got killed. Do you think the Raven can find us? Yeah, I've been there. I can remember what the lobby looks like, Jamey muttered partly to himself. I need to see her. I don't want to wait. Jamey finally looked at Henry, who stared back, then grabbed Henry's hand. I'm sorry, Henry. I just can't wait. Jamey closed his Chapter 9. Jamey opened his eyes. The two boys stood at one end of a long, tall, dimly lit room. glass and steel, rose 4 stories above them, to an enormous roofless skylight and a November early morning sky, dark and cold, sprinkled with stars. On the left, a sign for patient registration and shops to buy bagels, salads, and patient gifts. On the right, a plant box with a dark green corn plant and an escaping vine, and another with an indoor garden, couches, tables, armchairs, and a place to get coffee. The Mary Washington Hospital lobby was almost empty. A woman lay curled up under a blanket on a nearby couch, a stuffed canvas bag and suitcase at her feet. Henry looked behind him to see a glass wall and glass doors leading outside into a parking lot. At patient information, a sign instructed people to either call a phone number or come back at 7 a.m. When my grandmother had a heart attack, they brought her here, Jamey whispered as he pulled away from Henry and dropped his hand. She died here. Jamey paused. I'm sorry, I just jumped. He looked down at the floor. I had to see her. I promise we'll find Dr. M or she'll find us. She is a witch. It's okay, it's your mother. You know, I've never been here. I've never even been in Fredericksburg before. Fredericksburg, the town fun forgot, that's what some University of Mary Washington students say. I grew up here, it's home. Jamey shrugged. I was 10 when Grandma died, and I don't remember her all that well. She was kind of cranky and liked to make buttermilk custard pies and sit in her rocking chair. She took care of us after school, fussed a lot and smelled of Jergens lotion. Jamey stopped as if to gather himself. Let's go find someone who can tell me where Mama is. Henry grabbed his arm before Jamey could go tearing off. Take a look at us. Jamey, they're not going to tell us anything. At least they had washed off the blood and most of the dirt, but Jamey's clothes were torn and muddy. A big bruise shadowed one side of his face. There were cuts on his face, his neck, and his hands. Neither boy had shaved in days, which was much worse for Henry. Silver stubble looked weird on a 19-year-old. Henry's clothes were clean but 2 sizes too big, and his oversized flip-flops and odd long toenails were caked with dirt. He pulled out a bit of leaf from his wild hair. The boys watched as it drifted to the floor. So what should we do? Henry pointed to the phone number on the desk sign. Hello? I just heard my mother was ill, and so I rushed up here as soon as I could, and there's no one at the desk to help. Yeah, I know it's 4 a.m. But it's my mother. Mary Frances Walker Curry. Q-R-E-Y. Are you sure? My dad said. Okay, thanks for checking. Jamey put down the phone and looked at Henry. They said she wasn't here. But Daddy said she was. I don't get it. They changed their minds? I don't know, Jamey, maybe he took her to an urgent care or something, just not here. Let's go to your house. And do what, Henry? Jamey snapped. Show up in the kitchen, the 2 of us. Looking like this. Oh yeah, hi, we just dropped in. I'm not even sure I can get both of us there. Jamey wrapped his arms around himself. I'm sorry. I'm so tired. I guess everything we've been through is finally hitting me, and now this doesn't make sense. My dad calls, tells me Mama's really sick. She's in the hospital, and what? She's sort of sick? She's not sick. She went somewhere else. Henry bit back his own angry words. Okay, let's go somewhere and sleep. We'll check on your mother after we rest, okay? Don't take this out on me. Where? I can't just pop into my friends' houses. Franklin doesn't want to see his fag best friend ever again, let alone my fag boyfriend. That's not my fault, Henry growled, tired of being understanding. Just plain tired. No, I'm exhausted. And he was getting angrier and angrier at Jamey. Just say it. You're scared of taking your fag boyfriend home. Let's go to the public library. Bums fall asleep there all the time, and we can find a corner somewhere. Jamey reached for Henry's hand and closed his eyes. Jamey opened his eyes and they stood in front of the circulation desk. Jamey insisted they look for a place in the library where they could hide from sight. Henry wondered just who Jamey thought would see them at 4 a.m., but pointing that out didn't seem like a good idea. Jamey was finally satisfied with the staff lounge upstairs. Since the couch was too short for either of them, they took the pillows and cushions off and got comfortable a few feet apart. The room was cold. Henry wriggled over and pulled Jamey, who didn't resist, into a spoon. Jamey's back was warm against Henry's chest. He was relieved Jamey didn't protest or pull away. I shouldn't have snapped at you. I'm sorry. It's okay. It's not okay. I shouldn't take my bad moods out on you. Don't worry about it. Henry kissed him and nuzzled his neck. Don't worry. Let's go to sleep. They dreamed of wolves and winged monsters. Henry. Hey Henry, wake up. Listen to this. Henry woke at Jamey's touch, tired and stiff. He looked at Jamey groggily as he pushed himself up from their nest of pillows and cushions. Jamey sat beside him holding newspapers. The light in the lounge was turning from gray to yellow. Sunlight was creeping in through the blinds. I woke and couldn't go back to sleep, and I found this on the table over there. Listen. This is in the Richmond Times-Dispatch. Cherokee Road mystery. Fire consumes church house. Saturday's fire that burned down a church, and the house next door on Cherokee Road seems to have no known origin. Well, what? Henry wished he could take a shower. God, he was hungry. 1. Granola bar was nowhere near a meal. Of course Jamey couldn't sleep. It's like it's not happening, like we don't exist. Jamey scowled. She said the Watchers did that, remember? Come on, let's get out here before we have to explain to some janitor, never mind a librarian, what we're doing here. For what had to be the 17th time, Jamey reminded himself that the University of Mary Washington was only a handful of blocks away, and students came and went in the 7-Eleven on Jeff Davis Highway / Route 1 all the time. The 2 boys wearing dark blue UMW sweatshirts and jeans, and talking to the frizzy red-haired clerk were obviously students. They looked scruffier than he did, and that was after spending the night on the floor in the public library. Maybe all those couch cushions and pillows had helped that, and washing up in the library men's room. No more twigs and leaves and tangled hair. These boys, however, were paying for their 16-ounce coffees and cinnamon buns and bear claws. I'll pay 7-Eleven back someday. Promise. Jamey wondered if God was listening to his prayers. Not according to his parents. He watched the 2 UMW boys go out talking to each other, the taller one stroking the shorter one's back. The shorter boy didn't shake off the hand. He even seemed to lean into their boyfriends. Not that he could call Henry that to his parents. Jamey knew he would choke on the word boyfriend before he could get out it of his mouth. Yet here I am, planning to zap into their front yard with my boyfriend, after robbing the 7-Eleven. God, please let Henry understand. I just can't say it in public. Can't touch him in public. Not yet. I can't be like those 2 boys. That doesn't make it any less true. He looked at his right hand. He could feel Henry's hand on his skin, the squeeze, the touch just a few minutes ago. Jamey slid open the glass door to the cold drinks and snagged 2 bottles of orange juice. Bear claws, no donuts, easier, less mess were next. 2. Bananas. On the next aisle, beef jerky. Finding everything you need? You can leave that stuff on the counter if you need to. The woman smiled at him as she tucked some of her frizz behind her ears. Jamey and the clerk were the only 2 people in the 7-Eleven. Jamey nervously smiled back as the door chimed open, and a woman entered who looked like she was heading to an office. I promise to pay you back someday, Jamey whispered as the clerk turned to say hello to the woman on her way to the cappuccino machine. Jamey closed his eyes. He opened them across the street on the sidewalk in front of the giant food grocery store in the Eagle Village shopping center. He scanned the parking lot. Henry must have gotten caught by traffic after leaving him in the 7-Eleven. There he is. Henry looks like a street person. His 2-day silvery beard makes him seem 10, maybe 15 years older. Do people turn gray at 29? Jamey shivered, wishing they could go inside somewhere and eat. Hey, you beat me here, Henry called out as he walked up. Too many cars. Everything go okay in the store? Henry sat beside him and reached for the orange juice. He took a big swig. Boy, am I hungry. Jamey leaned against him, wishing they could snuggle. Not that there were a lot of people around at 7 in the morning. Yeah, okay. I just feel bad about stealing food. He handed Henry a banana and a donut and the jerky. We'll pay them back later, remember? I know, but still. Let's eat and go. I'm cold. When they'd finished eating and disposed of their trash, Jamey took a deep breath and looked at Henry. I really need to go see Mama and find out why. Daddy was talking about her being sick. He said she was asking for me. I know. Let's do it. Jamey took Henry's hand and closed his eyes. Henry had wondered what Jamey's house looked like, and whether seeing the house would tell him something about Jamey that he needed to know. He wished He and Jamey had had more time to talk so Jamey could tell him about everyone who lived here. He wished he knew their stories. They stood on the sidewalk, looking at a 2-story white frame house that held a lot of secrets about the red-haired blue-eyed godling who had lived here. A front porch and a vine-wrapped railing that needed painting with a wooden swing swaying back and forth, old chains creaking. Henry wondered who had just been sitting there, and what might have been said if he and Jamey had appeared out of nowhere in front of the swinger. Bushes pressed close to the house. More vines grew up the railings on the well-worn brick steps. A picture window, curtains pulled, lights behind the curtains, and more in the upstairs and downstairs windows. Ready? Yeah, I guess. I've never had to knock before. Let's go around back down that side path over there. Henry nodded, smelling Jamey's fear. Bushes made a leafy green wall along the flagstone path. The steep back steps led to a metal storm door and a tiny porch with a freezer and a refrigerator on one side, and metal folding chairs stacked against the wall below a window. Into the kitchen. Jamey froze just inside the porch door. A red-haired woman stood at the sink, washing dishes. She was singing. Henry gently nudged him forward, watching Jamey ease off his backpack as if he were dreaming. He looks like her. The hair, the eyes. That's not my mother, that's her sister, my Aunt Louisa. What's she doing here? Jamey watched as the singing woman rinsed the dishes. She turned as if she'd heard them over the running water and through the door. She froze in shock, then quickly opened the kitchen door. Jamey? Is that you? The woman said, surprise surrounding her words. Mary. Francis, he's here. He came home. Jamey's home, she shouted over her shoulder. Aunt Louisa? Is Mama sick? Daddy left a message about her being sick. Oh, this is Henry. Jamey reached back to take Henry's arm and gently pulled him forward to stand beside him. Louisa, what's going on? Jamey jerked at the sound of a male voice coming from upstairs. That has to be his father. Jamey's scared of him, but I know he loves him too. George, Jamey's home, she shouted again and turned back to the two boys. She's going to be so glad to see you. She was afraid you wouldn't be home for Thanksgiving. Aunt Louisa, I thought Mama was sick. Daddy left me a message. He said she was in the hospital. Jamey, is it really you? Oh, my baby, my sweet baby, oh, my sweet baby boy. What happened to you? You're hurt? Oh, my sweet boy, come here, come here, come here. An older woman in a bathrobe, her red hair streaked with gray, supported by a man helping her walk, stood in the hallway. This woman was Jamey's mother. Henry could see Jamey in her face. The man was Jamey's father. The shapes of their bodies were the same. They smelled of love, of fear, and of something else. Jamey dropped his hands from Henry's back and took 1-2 steps forward, then ran into his mother's arms. They were both crying. Henry stayed where he was, in between the porch and the kitchen, in between warmth and cold, a little behind Aunt Louisa, who was crying and praying at the same time. He watched as he held on to the door frame. Jamey and his mother hugged as they talked over each other, interrupting, trying to ask questions and give answers. His mother kept touching his face, her fingers on each bruise, as if counting and recounting them. His father slapped him on the back, ruffled his hair, murmured something into his ear, then stepped into a room Henry couldn't see. In a little while he heard the man talking, his voice low as if on the phone. 2 younger children, also red-haired, they have to be Casey and Maddie, the twins who are around 11, came crashing down the stairs yelling, Jamey's home, Jamey's home, he came home. A big red hairy dog came galumphing down after them. The 2 kids danced around Jamey, who was holding on to his mother, pulling at him, saying his name, asking if he was going to stay. Another dog, an old white muzzled yellow hound, appeared and kept shoving his big head against Jamey's leg. An overweight orange and white cat stopped at the foot of the stairs waiting its turn. Orange, that's his old cat. He loves Orange. Orange slept with him. The dogs, Red and Aloysius, slept with him too. For a sharp, intense moment Henry wanted nothing more than to be there inside. The noise, the hugs. He had wanted this all his life. I want y'all to meet Henry. Jamey waved Henry into the kitchen. Henry pressed his hand against his heart. He's going to tell them who I am. He took a deep breath and stepped into the warmth of the kitchen with its pale blue walls, gauzy curtains, and open spice rack between the cabinets and the sink. I bet Jamey made that for her. The room, the house should have felt friendly, but it didn't. He could smell and feel the rising tension. Aunt Louisa's arm hard across his chest stopped him. Are you a friend of Jamey's? Mrs. Curry cleared her throat, frowning. Louisa, I told you about him. This is Henry. The dogs looked at Henry and growled deep in their throats, hackles up in protective stance. The red dog was ready to charge. The cat, its fur and tail raised, hissed. Red, stop, back off, it's okay. You too, Aloysius, orange. This is Henry. He's my friend, Jamey said, his voice uncertain and hesitant as he held out his hand to Henry. Aunt Louisa, what are you doing? Let him in. Then he turned to his mother, who was still crying. I thought you were sick. Daddy said you were in the hospital and I went there, but they had no idea what I was talking about. I really was sick, but I'm a little better now. Her voice barely carried as she looked away and down, as if some message were written there. I almost went to the hospital. That's what he meant. Oh, I know who you are now. You're not taking one step farther into this house, you filthy sodomite, Aunt Louisa hissed, pushing Henry in the chest as she shoved him back. You corrupted him, seduced him into sin. It's all your fault. Get out, go. Aunt Louisa, stop, stop, Jamey yelled. He pulled away from his mother and started toward Henry, but both his parents stopped him, each one grabbing one arm. Your friend. Mr. Curry frowned. He looked at his wife and then at the front door. Casey and Maddie looked at first their father, then their mother. The sharp sound of Aunt Louisa's voice, they had grown silent. Everyone reeked of fear. Casey, take the dogs. Maddie, you take Orange. Get them all out of here, take them downstairs. Then get ready for school. Louisa, call Mark, ask him to come pick up the twins. But Daddy, Jamey just came home, we want to. You heard what I said. We need to talk to your brother alone. Now go. Now. Mama, we want to play with Jamey, Maddie whined, pulling at her mother's bathrobe sleeve. Go. Now, Mr. Curry snapped. The twins did as they were told, dragging and carrying the growling, hissing animals with them. Henry tried to walk around Aunt Louisa, but she moved to stop him, shoving him out on the porch. He felt Mr. Curry looking him over, from the dirty feet up to his spiky black and silver gray hair, and it was clear the man didn't like what he saw. Mama, Daddy, what's going on? Henry's just trying to be friendly. Let me go. What are y'all doing? Let me go. Jamey jerked against their tightening grip. No, son, we are doing this for you. To save you. I was sick, but I'm better enough to save you. His mother pulled him back against her. A friend? He's an abomination. Mr. Curry's lips curled in disgust. He glanced at his watch and back at the front door. Aunt Louisa picked up the phone in the hallway and dialed quickly. She whispered into the receiver. Henry strained to hear her, but like when Mr. Curry had called, there was too much background noise. All Henry could sense was the wrongness of the talk. His skin tingled with change energy. What? Daddy? Don't say that to Henry. What's going? Is somebody coming? Love him, let me go, I said. Let me go. Henry. He said he loves me. Jamey, let's get out of here, Henry yelled, but before he could get back inside the kitchen, Aunt Louisa, this time wielding a broom, shoved him so hard he fell and slammed onto the porch floor. Henry could tell by the shocked look on Mr. Curry's face this was probably one of the few times, if not the first, Jamey had ever really defied his father. The front door jerked open, and a tall, white-haired man in a black suit rushed in, with 4 men behind him also in black suits. Jamey, Henry yelled again as he scrambled to his feet, forcing back a deep growl in his throat, pushing away another surge of change energy in his legs, the ripple of fur down his back. These guys smell wrong. They're going to hurt him. As he ran forward, he felt the broom up against his head and heard Aunt Louisa shouting prayers. 2 of the visitors took positions in the front hall, 2 more in the doorway to the dining room. The first man stood by Mr. Curry. All 5 carried Bibles. Henry crossed his arms against his chest, a shield against the broom. And Aunt Louisa. He wished he had Jamey's sword to whack her with and stop her relentless prayers damning him to hell. The waited moment he had been feeling since they'd zapped into the hospital had arrived. The house reeked of fear and danger and love and hate. It hurt to smell it. Pastor Carl? What's your prayer team doing here? Jamey still pulled against his father's arms around his chest, his mother's hand gripping his. Let me go, you're hurting me. Henry. The pastor pressed his Bible against Jamey's heart and spoke. We're here at your parents' request. Your mother was sick, son. Sick of heart and body. Because she feared she was losing her oldest son to the sins of Sodom and Gomorrah, and to eternal damnation. Daddy? Mama? What's going on? Jamey's voice sounded smaller and much younger. We're going to save you from yourself. Mr. Curry stared at Henry, his voice cold and hard. If you're really his friend, take your vile sin and go. Leave this house. Jamey, they lied to you. Get us out of here. Jamey, jump us out of here. Jamey. Henry hated that his voice was breaking, his words dropping letters and sounds. Leviticus 18 verse 22. Thou shalt not lie with mankind as with womankind. It is an abomination, Pastor Carl intoned. An abomination. He spit out the last word. You, Jack, help George hold him. An abomination. Amen. The prayer team chorused. Please, darling, we just want to save you, Mrs. Curry whispered, wringing her hands. She looked directly at her son. Come back to Jesus, come back. Jesus loves you. We love you so much. I can't bear the thought of you going to hell. I can't. Tell him to go, Jamey. Mr. Curry shook Jamey with each word. Then he took a deep breath. Please, son. Tell him to go. In Romans 1 verses 26 to 27, the Apostle Paul says that men who commit indecent acts with other men will receive the penalty for their sin. Come back, James George. Curry, come home. Jamey, please get us out of here, Henry begged. Close your eyes, jump. I can't. Get out of here before they hurt you. Jamey struggled against the big prayer team man. Away, sodomite. You are an abomination. Jack, hold him. Don't let him move in inch toward this vile sinner. Garland, help Jack take George's place. An abomination, the prayer team chorused. Get away from my son, Mr. Curry snarled. Henry almost charged then. He almost gave in to the change. No, that would be stupid. Jamey, jump. Just jump someplace we both know. I'll find you. 1 Corinthians 6 verse 9 says neither fornicators nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor effeminate, nor homosexuals shall inherit the realm of God. Repent, James. Repent. Pastor Carl was shouting, the Bible held high over his head. In the hallway by the front door, Casey and Maddie stood frozen in place staring. The front door jerked open, and there was more yelling until a man someone called Uncle Mark took the twins away. Repent? Oh, repent, Jamey. We love you, God loves you, Jesus loves you. Mrs. Curry stroked his hair, his back, crooning into his ears that Jesus loved him, repent, be saved. She loved him over and over and over. Leave, no, this is wrong. Mr. Curry lifted his hand as if signaling for attention. He took 1 step, 2, 3 toward Henry and turned to face the prayer team, his wife, his son, his sister-in-law. Stop. Let me talk to him. Alone. To Henry the kitchen reeked of wrongness. It smelled of love and pain and fear, and there were just too many scents to sort out to understand. Henry couldn't get to Jamey, he couldn't touch him. He couldn't change, let the wolf out. That would only make things a whole lot worse. And Jamey couldn't or wouldn't jump. Each member of the prayer team chanted in turn, then together as a chorus. Get thee behind me, Satan. Get thee behind me, Satan. Please, everyone, let me talk to this boy alone, Mr. Curry yelled. The pastor and his chanting prayer team finally heard him. They stopped mid-chant. Go talk. We'll take care of Jamey. Take him upstairs, the pastor ordered. The nearest prayer team man who jerked Jamey up. No, this isn't love. You're hurting him. Henry clenched his fists against the change. Horrified, Henry watched as the man slung Jamey over his shoulder and carried him off. Outside. Please. Mr. Curry half reached for Henry, as if completing the reach, and actually touching Henry was more than he could do. Henry grabbed Jamey's pack and let Mr. Curry lead him out of the house, down the steps and into the backyard. The storm door hissed closed, muting the prayer team's continual chanting, away, sodomite, away. You say you love my son? I do very much, and he loves me. If you really love him, leave. Go away. Let him go. I will not lose him to this sin. The two of you together is wrong, Mr. Curry said, his words thick and heavy with pain. You must accept that. No, you're wrong. Let him go. You say you love him, but you're hurting him. Henry couldn't be sure, but he thought maybe the man had flinched at wrong and hurting. Please go. He belongs here. Go home to your parents. My dad didn't want me and my mother had to give me up when I was little. Henry hated the desperation in his voice. Some emotion he couldn't smell or name flickered across the man's face. Then, Mr. Curry held up his hand and shook his head. I'm sorry, but you have to go. We love him. We know what's best for him. Take this godforsaken symbol and go. Mr. Curry held out Jamey's pentacle. Henry took it and reshouldered Jamey's pack. Mr. Curry loved his son. He could smell it, but he also smelled wrongness and pain. Mr. Curry was crying. But for whom or what was a mystery. I love him. We belong together, Henry whispered, hating that he was crying. Too. We've been through hell together and back. I stood by him just a few hours ago. I protected his body with mine. I saved his life and he saved mine. I know he loves me. No, that is just not possible. He's back with us. He's safe. Please go. Mr. Curry turned and went back up the stairs. He stopped at the top and looked down. He belongs here with us. He's not like you. He made a horrible mistake. And now the Lord has saved him. We love him. I love him so much. I need to tell you what happened, who he is, who we are. He's my son. You're a mistake. Henry couldn't change into the wolf. If he charged inside the house, he would be stopped, shoved back. Mr. Curry opened the storm door and went inside the porch. Then the inside door for the kitchen closed and he was gone. Henry stood in the backyard. I've lost him. He turned and walked away. Chapter 10. Monday, November 23rd. Henry didn't look back to see if Mr. Curry was watching to be sure he left, or if Mrs. Curry or that crazy prayer team were watching him from the kitchen. He knew they were still there. He heard the chanting, though it was muted by closed doors. Away, sodomite. Abomination. Get thee hence, Satan. He knew Jamey wasn't watching or chanting. They were hiding him, trying to turn him back into a normal person. Henry growled and snarled as the points of his ears stretched. When he got to the wall, he made himself look back but saw no faces in the window. He scrambled up and over the wall, using a great chimenea as a leg up. He heard the freestanding ceramic outdoor fireplace fall and break behind him. He didn't care. He dropped into a scraggly flower bed and ran down the street, left at the corner, up the hill. Running, running, running. I heard him. He told them he loves me. Why didn't he just close his eyes and jump? But he said he couldn't. I don't get it. I just don't get it. I've lost him. I have to get him out of there. Henry was afraid to even think the next sentence, but the thought came anyway. Slow and painful. He doesn't want to leave. Jamey's mother and father and aunt all loved him, and the preacher believed he was helping Jamey, saving him. None of what happened made any sense. Henry desperately needed to change. He had never felt the wolf so frantic to get out. He could feel his skin bubble and stretch as growls rumbled in his throat. Fur rippled down his back. His tailbone pushed against his jeans. The wolf wanted to run south to Richmond and find darkness and safe shadows. The wolf also wanted to charge back to the Curry's house and leap through a window, jump on that damn preacher. Henry made himself stop. I need to think. I have to think. I have to do something. I need to go do something. Can I find a safe place to change? But he had nowhere to go. No safe house, no Charlie's apartment, no basement apartment, no Larkin's. What would the boy do back in Richmond, naked, with his clothes left on a street in Fredericksburg? How could he find Dr. Malloy? But staying wolf for the time it would take to go 60 miles, that really scared him. The wolf might not want to let go. The wolf had never been this angry or scared before. Its anger and fear pushed against his human self. He wished he could have really talked to that alpha back on William Island. There were so many things he didn't know. I have to rescue Jamey. I need to figure out a way to get him back. But he was no longer sure Jamey wanted to be rescued. I wish I could talk to Dr. M. And not just about dreams but everything. She was, he realized, the closest thing he had to a mother. He wanted to be near her. But she wasn't only like a mother, and he wasn't too sure she wanted to be his mother or anybody else's. Dr. M was his friend, and except for Jamey, who else could he call a friend? The guys back at Larkin's, Carlos, Eduardo, Dooley, Bonnie. Henry shook his head. He barely knew the other witch, and she seemed to think he and Jamey, prophecy or not, were little better than Nuisances. Dr. M said the Watchers had wiped the memories of most of the Larkin's guys. Even if they did remember him, he was the weird guy in plants, who didn't talk much. Not their friend. Henry stopped walking when he reached the intersection at the top of a hill. He was in a town he'd never been in before, and he had no idea where he was. Clenching his teeth and fists, he forced back the change one more time. Hurt. This was only temporary. At some point and soon he would have to change. And run, but not here, not now. A wolf running loose in Fredericksburg would attract a lot of attention. He was at the intersection of College Avenue and William Street. Directly across the street, a brick wall announced he was at the edge of the University of Mary Washington campus. Jamey's parents had wanted him to go there, not to VCU in that den of sin, Richmond. They wanted me to live at home, Jamey had said. No way. I'd go crazy. Now Jamey was back at home and his parents had gone crazy and they wanted to make their son crazy too. He was there waiting for me in Cornwall, waiting for the wolf and the boy. No, he's waiting for me back in that house. I won't lose him. I will get him back. When the green walk signal started flashing, Henry didn't know what else to do but cross the street and keep walking. The possibility Jamey had chosen not to jump was something Henry didn't want to think about. At the next traffic light, Henry turned into the school's main gate. Directly ahead, a straight line of tall holly trees split the street and led to a clock tower. He took a deep breath and gathered the shadow around him. With the wolf suppressed, he had enough energy to sustain his shadow, its pale grayness a veil between him and the rest of the world. For the moment Henry felt safe. He passed a classroom building on his right marked Combs. There was a big square lawn on the right and the hollies on his left. Maybe he would find some clue about where to go next at the clock tower. It told the time, it could tell him other things. It's only 5:08 in the morning? That explained why he saw a handful of people on the brick walkway. That and Thanksgiving was 3 days away. Were we really in England just yesterday? A young woman hurried past, her head in a book. An older woman, a professor, he guessed, with a briefcase over one shoulder, walked past him next. He stopped at the corner of the lawn and watched as the professor followed the girl into Combs. Another student, yawning, pushed open the front door of Bushnell Hall, a residence, according to a dark blue and white sign. Bushnell faced Combs. The student leaving Bushnell ran between parked cars and across the grassy square. Another student, this one drinking coffee, came out the same door as the yawner. They must live there. Henry wanted to be like them. He wanted to wake up in a bed in a residence hall beside Jamey, gather books and papers, go to class. It hurt to stand by himself hidden inside his shadow and watch them wishing, wanting. Henry walked down a red brick path. He had no idea how to save Jamey and he had no idea if there was time to save him. Maybe it was all over. Jamey would be easy pickings for the Watchers in his parents' house. And what would happen to him? To everybody? Their quest would fail, no key would be found. Magic would erupt, volcanoes might burst into flames and geysers would shoot water and steam into the clouds. Mundanes would do and see strange things, and then the Watchers, triumphant, would smash everything back down, especially pets and witches and godlings. The two of them would have to live the rest of their lives in hiding or be killed. Before all this, before Jamey, Henry might not have cared so much. But now everything was different. Loki, Henry thought, could have left some better clues. The key waits for you at home. It is close to Godling and Pet. Look in, not out. You can already see. I can already see what? Close to us? In what or where? Here. In Richmond? Not that it mattered. Jamey had been taken out of the quest. I'm not giving up. I have no idea what to do, but I'm not giving up. I'll find a phone. Something, call Dr. M. But he couldn't. The number he had memorized was for a phone that had burned. Henry didn't stop again until he came to the library. The wolf had wanted to stop and spray a huge rock that seemed to be some sort of reusable campus display sign. Bright orange and red letters on the stone wished everyone a happy Thanksgiving. The boy wanted to go in the student center and just sit and watch. Henry wanted to be like the students he saw huddled at tables who were drinking coffee and eating pancakes or breakfast biscuits and then going home for Thanksgiving with turkey and dressing and cranberry sauce. He shrugged. Thanksgiving had never been any great shakes in the foster homes he had shuffled in and out of. It was the table's coffee, okay, tea less caffeine, and biscuits he wanted. And Jamey. Quiet filled the library, soft and warm. Henry felt as though he were inside a whisper. He found his way up a flight of stairs and into the stacks and study. Carols arranged like a little treehouse. There he discovered a dark corner. Like a den. Feeling overwhelmingly tired, he curled up, holding his shadow close like a blanket. Shelves and shelves of books were around him. He opened his right hand. He was bleeding. Jamey's star was covered in blood. Henry had gripped the star too long and too hard. The star throbbed in tandem with the pain in his hand. He watched the star soak up the blood as if it were a sponge. The pain in his hand went away. Henry shook his head. He was too tired to figure out what was going on except for more magic. He would have to ask Dr. M if no when he saw her. Feeling safe inside his shadow, Henry closed his eyes and pressed himself against the cubicle walls. He extended his arms as if hugging someone, pulling him close, his back against his chest. It didn't help. Maybe if he slept for a little while, things would make more sense. The boy stood on the beach. He knew this place. Coverack, Cornwall. Jamey should be here. Where was he? Jamey. No one answered. All he could hear were the waves on the sand. He had to find him. The boy struggled out of his clothes, tripping over his feet, desperately trying to stay ahead of the change. It had never been more insistent. Before he kicked off his jeans, his claws had extended. His feet were paws. His tail fanned the air. His shirt stuck on his head. He ripped and clawed off. He ran. Ella observed the senior watcher as he breathed out the command, a thin gray smoke. The smoke caught the wind and became a pale susurrus, entering dreams, stirring memories, awakening promises. Darkness was calling. At last, she thought, we will all be awake. Now we can finish this job and move on. For her, that meant returning to the caves to sleep, to regenerate, and eventually be reborn. They answered from all over Richmond and as far south as Petersburg, as far north as Fredericksburg, and beyond central Virginia into the Tidewater to the Potomac, the mountains, and into West Virginia to the ocean. The senior watcher was waking up all of Virginia. Up one flight, 2 more doors, into aisles and aisles of labeled shelves, ignoring 2 or 3 startled students, a treehouse of study. Carols up narrow steps, and there, huddled asleep behind a chair under a corral desk, a wolf slept, surrounded by a tangle of torn and ripped clothing and the last thin black and green shreds of shadow. Henry dreamed. Dr. M and Bonnie and the beasts were looking for him. His raven told them where to go. Pruck, pruck, pruck. North. Henry stirred, shrugged his body. They were downstairs at the library circulation desk. Dr. M told the raven she had once worked here at this school. The raven was uninterested. He wanted to find Henry. Pruck, pruck. Henry body shrugged again. The 2 witches tossed out a net of light, trapping the woman at the library desk, stilling her cries, as if they were shushing a baby bird. They tossed out another net, which pulled down a bow-tied man, shushing him. Pruck, pruck, pruck. Damn, he's in wolf form. Henry, wake up. The wolf lifted its head, tried to stand, stumbled, its paws caught in a tangle of torn clothing and shredded shadow. The extra clothes are in the van. I thought he had better sense than to change in the library of all places. The wolf heard Bonnie mutter, and he looked at her, his head to one side. Henry, you're going to have to stay a wolf until we can get you out of here. Dr. M watched the raven gently pull at the wolf's fur. The wolf licked the bird's head, then eased his paws out of the tangle and sat up, tail thumping. His body rippled. Henry, no, wait. Not here, you don't have any clothes. Is that a wolf? In the library. A boy stood a few feet away, clutching his books in front of him like a shield. His dark eyes were sleep-heavy, his black hair stuck up in odd places on his head, and he had a red Starbucks cup in his free hand. Henry, don't. Henry stood up. The raven fluttered and landed on Henry's bare shoulder. I swear to God I saw a wolf, or a really big dog right there. Is it a service animal? Whoa, you don't have any clothes on. What the hell? Kathleen sighed and raised her staff, which popped and sparked. The net of light caught him as he ran, silencing his shrieking as it pulled the boy down to the floor. He twitched on the carpet and lay still. I dreamed you were finding me, and here you are, Henry said in a sleepy voice. Stop pulling at my hair, you goofy bird. Yes, I am glad to see you. All of you, he added, looking up from the bird. You did that in my dream. He waved toward the boy wrapped in the net of light on the carpet. Let's get out of here before anyone else shows up. I saw an emergency exit. Sign over there. Henry, pull on what's left of your pants. Bonnie herded them out of the study corral treehouse and toward the exit. Kathy, take out that alarm. After Dr. M zapped the door alarm with her staff, they took off running down the emergency exit stairwell when the building alarm went off. By the time they were outside and walking as if everything was normal, they heard sirens. Better pull your shadow on, Henry. Students don't walk around barefoot without a shirt in November. Not unless something is wrong with them. Besides, those jeans aren't really hiding anything. That way the van is on a side street, Kathleen said, pointing. They got Jamey. It's over. Henry gathered enough shadow to hide himself, the two witches, and the raven. I'm sorry. I couldn't stay a wolf any longer. Was afraid the wolf wouldn't let go. Not after he took over when I fell asleep. That hasn't happened in a while. Maybe it's that I'm really tired. Jamey's gone. Maybe the watchers are right anyway. We should stay secret. Neither witch replied as they walked through a parking lot, around another big campus building, and across a lawn to a brick path that took them to the sidewalk in the street. Bonnie grabbed Henry's arm and pulled him around until their faces were inches apart. You listen to me, Henry Thorne. Nobody's giving up on anybody. It's not over yet. We're going to keep going. As for staying a secret, it's too late for that, and I'm not sure we ever should have been. We let those old gods scare us all those centuries ago, and we hid. We believed them, and we were fools. We were part of the people once. It's how the world is meant to be. The van's down this street. Let's go. They heard a siren followed by truck horns. They kept walking.